Several local lawmakers took to the floor of the House to deliver very passionate speeches about the impeachment vote. Erica Zucco joins us now. And Erica, no real surprise how our local guys voted.
Yeah, Barry, it was pretty much what we had expected. There were some strong comments from both sides of the aisle, but the voting itself pretty much went down party lines. Representative Joaquin Castro was selected as an impeachment manager for the next phase when this goes on trial in the Senate. We also heard from several other Texas Democrats and Republicans throughout yesterday's hearings there. Representative Chip Roy's statements were interesting, saying there was perhaps impeachable conduct, but he took issue with the articles themselves as they were drafted.
If inciting a deadly insurrection is not enough to get a president impeached, then what is?
We don't do this, then what are we going to stand for?
Donald Trump has honored thugs worldwide.
Pressuring the vice president to violate his oath of the Constitution to count the electors. It was foreseeable and reckless to sow such a false belief that could lead to violence and rioting by loyal supporters whipped into a frenzy.
And we will be watching to see what Senator John Cornyn and Senator Ted Cruz say and decide as we head into the next phase of all of this. Live downtown, Erica Zucco, KENS 5 Eyewitness News.